Hey everyone, welcome to Celigo's LinkedIn Live series. This is a special episode with Jan Arendtsz, the CEO and founder of Celigo. I'm your host, Lisa Martin. Jan, welcome to the program. Great to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to be having a great conversation about iPaaS, its evolution. We're going to talk to you about automation challenges, IT business alignment. We'll talk about why Celigo, and then you're going to get some great advice from Jan on starting automation. Jan, talk a little bit about Celigo. You founded it back in 2011, the evolution of iPaaS that you must have seen and where you think it's going. What are some of the things that you've seen in that last 10, 12 years?
Yeah, so quick history. We started in 2011, as you said, then decided to go ahead and entirely rebuild our product in 2015, launched it in 2016. And the reason for us doing that was we saw so many changes in those 5 years from 2011 through 2015, the way companies were buying SaaS applications, deploying them, the problems they were solving, it changed rapidly in those 4 to 5 years. And so for all practical purposes, the company was really founded back in 2015. And I bring that up just to highlight how much the space has changed. And so we've gone from having this iPaaS products from a number of vendors where they built these products primarily to serve an IT type user, to solve the problem where it was more connecting on-prem apps with SaaS apps, to now a much more modern type solution, which we call the next generation of iPaaS, where we want both a technical IT type user as well as more of a business type user. I call it more of a tech savvy business user to be able to come in and help solve some of today's integration problems. So that's part of the evolution we've been through.
So tremendous change, you said, in just a 4-year time period. We've seen an even more of an acceleration the last 3 years alone with the macroeconomic climate. As enterprises are transforming, they're modernizing, they're digitizing, what does an iPaaS look like for a modern enterprise today?
Right. So I think an iPaaS in today's world has to serve the entire company. It cannot just only serve an IT type user. So I think that's one fundamental shift that we've seen. And the first generation of iPaaS solutions, that cycle is on the wane because they either need to step up and they need to modernize their solutions to be relevant. And in today's world, we want to make sure that IT users can go in and solve particular problems. Business users can come in and solve particular problems. So that's one area. Second is, irrespective of whether it's an IT or business type user, employees within a certain organization need to be able to come in and learn the product fairly soon. It's got to be intuitive. You in this day and age, it's not feasible for users to go take a 5-day training class to learn a particular product. It's got to be intuitive. As soon as you log in, it's got to be able to tell you, hey, it's got to be able to guide you and say, what do you want to solve? How can I help you? And take you to the finish line. Next, there's got to be this concept of certain types of integrations, certain types of use cases that occur on a regular basis. There are certain trends. Those need to be prepackaged, pre-built whenever possible so that users don't have to start from scratch. They can start from a pre-built offering. In certain cases, fully productized, where all you do is you just go ahead and configure it. In other cases, you just deploy it. In other cases, you start a certain integration and you can build it from an existing template or an accelerator type offering. So these are some of the changes that we've seen.
But some organizations, some enterprise iPaaS solutions are not quite hitting the mark. You mentioned some of the things that fundamentally a modern iPaaS for modern enterprise needs to have. Why do you think some companies are just missing the mark?
Yeah, so again, I go back to this first generation of solutions. The problem that they solve has changed dramatically. So I think those vendors are struggling to stay relevant. In other cases, it's how quickly can you really derive value out of an iPaaS? What's the time to value? How long does it take you to go ahead and build an automation? Who can build that automation? And then, surprisingly, the thing that most companies don't talk about is once you've built it, what's the effort? What's the cost of maintaining it, managing it? Look, integration is not easy. You build something, there's complex business logic, you're working with fairly technical APIs, and there are a number of things within a particular workflow that can go awry. There might be errors. How do you manage all of that? And so one thing that we've done is we've really focused on the management aspect. As an example, we've used AI and machine learning to be able to go in and really understand the errors that accumulate within a certain workflow, to categorize that and present it back to the user, and in certain cases, with the user's permission, be able to do some self-healing so that the effort, the cost of maintaining a particular automation, a particular workflow is much lower. And I think this is something that is often overlooked. Everyone wants to talk about, well, how easy is it? How quickly can I build a particular workflow, which is, clearly where most users, companies start the conversation, and that's natural, but you also have to think about that maintenance.
Absolutely. That's critical, right? That's ongoing. That's day to day. Talk a little bit about some of the trends in automation. You mentioned AI. It's probably the hottest topic right now in tech. But what are some of the trends that you're seeing in automation, and where are customers coming to you saying, help us start this?
Yes. So automation is or integration, I should say, is a subset of the larger automation space. Ultimately, we look at automation as automating a business process in the enterprise. And a business process might have numerous use cases. You can break it down into workflows. And there are many ways that you can automate a business process or a use case. For example, you might be able to use a robotic process automation type solution, which is a fairly simple, quick to deploy, but not quite as robust. You might have human-centric workflows where there might be an approval, where the workflow stops until someone responds and takes action, and then it goes back to execution. So we see a massive convergence about to happen in the space. In fact, it is happening right now. And this is something that we're really excited about. And we want to be able to look at automation not just from the perspective of connecting business apps or connecting data sources together, but being able to do automation that involves machines speaking with other machines and executing business logic, which is what we do really well today, but also to bring in some of these human-centric capabilities to have humans take part in these workflows as well. And that space is typically called the business process automation or business process management space. We see the lines become really blurry between integration or iPaaS and this BPA space, and that's something that we're very excited about and natively building within our products. So that's one direction we see the space going.
Okay.
Now, on AI, of course, everyone's talking about AI right now. And I got this question recently from a few different sources, actually, asking me, well, with the advent of AI, all the AI news in the last 6 months, is what we're doing relevant? Are the machines just going to go ahead and do it automatically somehow, magically? The answer is no, not at all. But we think with conversational AI that we can make this whole concept, if you want to be able to implement a workflow, we can make it dramatically easier for a given user to be able to build a workflow by using conversational AI. And it's something that we're really excited. We've invested a fair bit right from the get-go, and fairly soon we're going to see our platform, this manifested in our platform, and our users be able to benefit from it.
So conversational AI is definitely going to have an impact on automation, sounds like what I'm hearing.
100%. I think everyone's going to look at it from a different way. We're pretty excited in terms of the path we're taking. We think it's going to drastically reduce the effort, the time it takes for anyone, especially that non-technical user, to be able to go ahead and put together a workflow to automate a use case or a business process.
Speaking of people, let's move on now to talking about IT business alignment. Jan, we talk about it all the time. It's a challenging thing to be able to facilitate. You talked about the technical users, the tech-savvy business users. Who in a customer's organization is responsible for the integration strategy and execution? And how can Celigo help facilitate alignment between the IT folks, the shadow IT folks, and the business users?
Yeah, so in general, IT, BizOps, those are the parties responsible for an integration strategy and automation strategy. Of course, it's based on the size of the company as well. Really large companies may have it grouped slightly differently, and really small companies may be a little bit more ad hoc. But by and large, the overall responsibility of having that blueprint lies with an IT type organization. That said, the devil is really in the details. Look, IT today, as you can imagine, is overrun with all types of requests coming from all kinds of constituencies. And one of the constituencies is automation and integration. And if you really look at, let's say, a mid-sized company or an enterprise type company, there's a lot from an integration perspective that IT needs to do. And it's practically impossible as an average for IT to be able to fulfill that. And that's where we get into this concept of how can others in the enterprise, who might not be as technical, but those tech-savvy business users that we talked about earlier, the people, the leaders, the owners of the business process who know it really well, they know the problem that they want to solve. How can they take part and build some of these automations? So we call this a federated model. And in simplistic terms, it falls somewhere between a central IT model where everything goes through IT versus more of an ad hoc Wild West type model where ITs bypass the whole shadow IT concept and users do everything. How can you find that happy medium where certain types of business processes, let's say quote to cash, how can that business process, every company is going to think about that differently, but typically that's the type of business process, as an example, that IT would want to manage themselves because it touches so many different applications. It's central to the business. You can argue that it's the backbone, the revenue backbone of the business, and you don't want anyone and everyone touching that particular business process. Now, that can still be built by IT and managed by IT, or it can be built by certain business owners, but ultimately managed by IT under lock and key.
Okay.
In a different example, let's say it's customer support, and there are certain use cases that need to be automated there. Mm-hmm. In that case, delegation makes a lot of sense. Why does IT need to be involved? IT can delegate that, empower those business units, those lines of business to go ahead and build it or help them, assist them, right? So there are many permutations, but a federated model allows for both. For IT to build and run something, for line of business users to build and run something, or any other permutation in the middle.
So the federated model to me sounds like an enabler of removing some of the friction that's probably there between business and IT, or real IT and shadow IT. And that sounds to me like maybe a differentiator in terms of if customers come to you saying, why Celigo?
Precisely, right? In this day and age, it's imperative that companies have optionality.
Yeah.
Look, some companies might decide to pass everything through IT, and that's fine. But more and more what we are seeing through our users, and we've got thousands of companies using our platform, we're seeing that users want to see this optionality. If they want empowerment, if they have the skill sets, and we think that's the way of the future.
Definitely. You talked about the trends in automation, the challenges there, what a modern iPaaS needs to deliver to organizations. So when you're in customer conversations, and I imagine you're in hundreds every year, talk to me about when they ask you, why should we pick Celigo versus a competitor? You talked about the differentiators. What do you say to them?
Yeah, so several differentiators. So first off, we are a next-gen iPaaS. You can start using us. You don't need to get trained. It's intuitive. IT users and business users can use us simultaneously. And by the way, when we say business users can use us as well, it's not at the cost of certain functionality that IT may need. Everything that IT needs is there. We try to make the user interface as simple as possible. But you're always 1-2 clicks away from looking under the hood. If you really want to go at it, you can go code, you can do all of that, right? So it's not compromising the IT side. So that's one. The second, arguably the one that I think has really put Celigo on the map, is we were a pioneer when it came to this concept of pre-built, pre-packaged integrations.
Yeah.
And we really, look, every iPaaS vendor out there has pre-built tools, templates, accelerators, so on and so forth. We've taken it to a much more advanced state where we've been able to build IP to really productize it, so that, let's say you're a VP of finance and you want a certain order to cash type business process automated. And we have a solution where you can go ahead and deploy it and configure a pre-built solution rather than build it from scratch. It's all pre-built. So that's something, the productization of these pre-built solutions is something that we really have been the pioneers. It's in our DNA. And maybe a third differentiator is around where we operate. Every integration vendor comes from a certain area of strength. It's based on how they got started. For us, our core area of strength has been being in the back office. Anything to do with back office business processes. Procure to pay, hire to retire, order to cash, quote to cash, customer 360. Use cases that really, for the most part, touch transactions, inventory, invoices, purchase orders, connecting with ERPs. These are fairly complex, mission-critical use cases, and that's where we got started. Certainly, we are an iPaaS that can do anything. We call this a horizontal solution, but if there's one area of expertise historically that we've had, it's been in the back office, and arguably that's one of the hardest things to do, the most complex.
Sounds like really being the engine of the back office, which is so important. Last question, Jan, when customers maybe are in the early stages of integration automation projects and they come to you saying, where do we start? What advice do you give them?
Yeah, so back in the day, I might have answered this question by saying, do you know what you want to do? Do you have a plan? Because ultimately, whether you use us or some other solution out there, the platforms out there can get the job done. It all depends on some of the details as to how fast, how quickly, how well, so on and so forth. Half the battle when it comes to integration is, do you understand the business process? Do you understand the use cases? Have you mapped it out properly? That concept now we've taken and we've made this our own IP in the form of a maturity model where we give you 5 levels of maturity, and we are able to have a given company come in and self-identify as to where they fall. And I think that is just immensely important and useful for these companies, because sometimes companies come in with low-level needs. They have an acute pain point. They want to connect system X and Y and Z together, and that's all they think about. And that's okay. That's a fine starting place as long as you understand that there's a journey. And of course, the other end of the spectrum is some other companies come to us with a complete blueprint on how they want to do integration. They've thought this through. From a maturity scale, they're at a much, much higher level. So the advice I would give to a typical company is understand where you are in that maturity scale, because your journey is going to differ based on that. Not everyone comes in at the same level.
Right. A lot of variation there, but it sounds like from a strategic perspective, the maturity model that you're talking about, that blueprint, that roadmap is really ideal and can be customized for customers based on where they are, and they just need to start. Jan, thank you so much for joining me, talking about what you've seen in the evolution of iPaaS, particularly you said in 2011 to 2015, how much change we've had now, and the real value that automation delivers to businesses in any organization. We really appreciate your insights and your time.
Thank you.
All right, for Jan Arendtsz, I'm Lisa Martin. We want to thank you for watching Celigo's LinkedIn Live show. We hope to see you next time. Take care.